You are already paying for tariffs, and most people do not even realize it. Not in some abstract economics textbook, not in a politician's speech, in your coffee, in your phone, in your car repair bill, in your running shoes. Because tariffs are usually sold as a way to punish foreign countries, but that is not what they really do. A tariff is not money taken from a foreign factory. It is a tax charged when a product crosses your border. And in the real world, that cost often starts at the border and ends up moving through your own economy. That is the part almost nobody explains clearly. A container ship is waiting outside a port before sunrise. Forklifts are already moving on the dock. Inside one metal box are coffee machines, phone chargers, children's shoes, and machine parts. By lunchtime, those containers will be unloaded, scanned, and sent inland. And somewhere in that chain, one extra charge quietly appears on the paperwork. That extra charge is a tariff. And despite how politicians talk about tariffs, the foreign factory does not pay that bill. The importer does. Usually, that importer is a domestic company, a company inside the country imposing the tariff, a company that now has a more expensive shipment the moment it crosses the border. That single shift in perspective changes almost everything.
At the simplest level, a tariff is a border tax on imported goods. If a company wants to bring in steel, toys, electronics, semiconductors, or raw materials from another country, the government can say if you want that product to enter the country, you must pay extra. Sometimes that extra is a percentage of the product's value. Sometimes it is a fixed amount per item. Either way, the imported product becomes more expensive the moment it enters the country. But the real story starts one step later. Because once the importer pays the tariff, the money does not just disappear. It changes behavior. The importer now has a higher cost, so it has to decide what happens next. Does it absorb the cost and accept lower profits? Does it pass the cost forward? Does it switch suppliers? Does it move production? Does it delay hiring? In the real world, the answer is usually some combination of all of the above, and every one of those decisions affects prices, jobs, investment, and supply chains. That is why tariffs sound simple in politics and become messy in real life. Now picture a store shelf. On that shelf are two similar products. One is made locally, one is imported. If the imported one suddenly costs more because of a tariff, the local one now looks more competitive, even if nothing about the local product actually improved. That is the political promise behind tariffs. Make foreign goods more expensive, and domestic producers may sell more. Protect factories, protect jobs, protect strategic industries, raise government revenue. And to be fair, in some cases it can work, at least in the short term. If imported steel becomes more expensive, domestic steel producers may sell more. If imported washing machines become more expensive, local brands may suddenly look more attractive. For some firms and some workers, that protection can be real. But this is where the story changes. Modern products are rarely made in one place. A car can cross borders multiple times before it is finished. A laptop may be designed in one country, use chips from another, and be assembled somewhere else. A factory that looks domestic may still depend on imported components or raw materials. So a tariff on imports can also raise costs for domestic manufacturers. The policy that protects one factory can quietly squeeze another. And this does not stay at the border. A blender that used to cost $60 now costs $72 because the importer paid more at the border and passed the cost along. A car repair shop pays more for a replacement part because that part crossed multiple borders during production. A small business owner pays more for packaging or electronics and has to decide whether to raise prices or quietly earn less. Tariffs sound like border policy. In practice, they leak into ordinary prices, business decisions, and paychecks.
Then there is retaliation. If one country taxes imports from another, the other country often responds in kind. Your country taxes their exports, they tax yours. Exporters lose customers, farmers lose overseas buyers, investment slows. That is how tariffs turn into trade wars. And this is not theoretical. In 1930, the United States passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, raising tariffs on thousands of imported goods during a severe downturn. It was meant to protect American farmers and businesses. Instead, many trading partners retaliated. Global trade contracted sharply. Most historians and economists do not say it caused the Great Depression by itself, but they widely treat it as a policy that made a bad crisis worse. In the recent US-China trade conflict, the same basic logic showed up again inside a far more interconnected economy. The United States imposed tariffs on large volumes of Chinese imports. China responded with tariffs on American goods. Some industries received temporary protection, but the costs did not stay neatly on one side of the border. They spread through supply chains. They raised manufacturing costs. They changed sourcing decisions. They affected exporters on both sides. At one point, U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods climbed as high as 145%, and a study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that around 94% of those tariff costs were borne by U.S. companies and consumers, not by China. Even when the message is, "We are making them pay," the bill rarely stays where the speech says it will. So if tariffs can backfire, why do governments keep using them? Because tariffs serve several different goals. Sometimes the goal is protection. Sometimes it is strategic security. Sometimes it is leverage in a geopolitical negotiation. Sometimes it is punishment for unfair trade practices. And sometimes it is simply revenue. That is also why there is a big difference between narrow tariffs and broad tariffs. A narrow tariff targets a specific product or sector. A broad tariff hits huge categories of imports or entire countries. The broader the tariff, the more likely it is to ripple through the wider economy. But in every version, the same principle sits at the center. A tariff changes relative prices in order to change behavior. That is why tariffs are never just about trade. They are about incentives. And today, those incentives operate inside a world far more interconnected than most people realize. Think about your phone. The design comes from California, the chips from Taiwan, the rare earth minerals from Congo or China, the assembly from Vietnam or India, the software updates from servers scattered across 3 continents. Now, put a tariff anywhere in that chain. It does not just affect one product. It affects every decision every company makes about where to source, where to build, and where to sell. Tariffs no longer hit simple products. They hit webs. That is why economists argue about tariffs so fiercely. Some say targeted tariffs can protect critical industries and reduce dangerous dependencies on rival countries. Others say tariffs are a blunt instrument, protecting visible jobs while creating invisible costs everywhere else. Both sides are reacting to something real, and that is what makes tariffs so politically powerful. They are easy to explain in one sentence and difficult to live with in a real economy. Protect our workers is simple, but an economy is not a slogan. If tariffs rise, you may pay more for products you never thought of as imported because the finished product is local, but the components are not. If tariffs protect a domestic industry, you may benefit indirectly through jobs or wages. If tariffs trigger retaliation, your country's exporters may lose sales, and that hits employment and growth in ways that feel invisible until they suddenly aren't. Change the price at one border, and the reaction spreads outward in every direction, through factories, through warehouses, through store shelves, through repair shops, through farms, through paychecks, through household budgets. By the time it reaches the real economy, it usually looks a lot less like foreign punishment and a lot more like a domestic trade-off. A tariff does not stop at the border. It starts there. It is a signal about what a country wants its economy to depend on. So the next time you hear a politician say tariffs will make another country pay, ask the real question. Who actually pays? Who actually profits? And who gets hit later? Because the bill rarely stops at the border. So here's my question. What product in your daily life has quietly become more expensive because of a tariff without you noticing? Drop it in the comments. I want to see what people are actually noticing. If you want more videos that make economics, finance, and global systems actually make sense, subscribe.